Welcome to the All Clear Firefighter Wellness Podcast, where grit meets growth and excuses get burned away. This is about mental, physical, and personal growth. Light your fire within. Let's get after it.
But you're wearing a mask the entire time.
The body keeps score. 22 veterans that takes their life every day.
8 out of 10 first responders have some kind of mental issue. There is nothing wrong with you.
Light your fire within.
Welcome to Behind the Sirens, a VFIS of North Carolina series. This is where we sit down and talk straight about leadership, risk, and the stuff that actually affects the fire and emergency service world. Whether you're brand new or you've been doing this a long time, it's about giving you and your crew the insight to make better calls, stay protected, go home with confidence.
Welcome to All Clear Firefighter Health and Wellness. Boy, I've got two good ones here today. We are doing another Behind the Sirens episode sponsored by VFIS, and we're going to be talking all things mental health, mental fitness, trauma, all the things that are buzzwords that we hear so much in the fire service and first responder realm now. But I want to introduce you guys to two very good friends of mine. We've got Mr. David Nathanson. We've also got Miss Ashlea Dillard. I'm going to just turn it over. David, why don't you introduce yourself? And when you're done, we're going to let Ashlea introduce herself, and you'll understand why we asked him to be here.
Yeah, thanks, Travis. I appreciate it, and I really appreciate the invitation back. I always enjoy our conversations, and I think selfishly I come away with them more informed and a better person for them. So thanks for having me back. So again, David, Nate, everybody calls me Nate, Nathanson, career Marine, multiple combat tours, 34 years in the Marine Corps, came to a very abrupt, sudden end, and I found myself on an island alone, loss of identity, loss of purpose, loss of, focus. Most importantly, when I finally stopped and took a look in the mirror, I also realized that I was an injured veteran. And I found out a lot of my trauma I came to the service with. So what do you do when you're confronted with that? You have an opportunity, like Viktor Frankl says, you can choose your attitude and your effort. And I chose to take control of both of those and immerse myself in the world of veteran and first responder trauma. I am blessed to work for two organizations that were focused on the front lines, if you will. Sheepdog Impact Assistance, where I run the university, where I make sure that we have policy and doctrine and standard operating procedures to continue to deliver this gift, and also work in the outdoor adventure world in that organization, where we take veterans and first responders out into nature and we tap into the healing properties of nature, camaraderie, and we do some things like emotional regulation techniques. We get into some constructive storytelling, try to help folks understand, they're not a broken individual. They're just a product of their experience. And then the other areas where I work is in a nonprofit here in Texas that is focused on female veterans at risk. And we provide them a safe environment to kind of restart. So I come to this for personal reasons, and I've decided to dedicate the rest of my life to bringing the gifts that so many people richly deserve.
And it's an honor to have you here, sir, yet again. I think you're our first three-timer to the podcast. Now, we got Miss Dillard here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this party?
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me as well. And I'm excited to be here again. It's such a cool mission and the heart behind everybody's podcast and the work that they're doing. It's just so cool to put that forward and to continue the mission. So really honored to be here. I am a former firefighter paramedic, so I spent just short of 10 years online. I'm here in Colorado. So I had a big calling on my heart about halfway through my career after losing a close friend and crew member to suicide that really sparked something deep within my gut and my heart that this has to be finished. Something else has to happen, that this is not okay. This normalizing going to more funerals by suicide rather than by natural death I was not willing to normalize that anymore. And whatever I could do to help change that, I was all in. So after kind of experiencing my own like coming to Jesus, I call it, and looking at what is going to be the best thing for me moving forward, realizing that I was stuck in my own suffering, stuck in my own burnout, stuck in my own compassion fatigue. All of those things were starting to compile, and it was time to make. And not only that, my body started screaming at me as well. So physical symptoms are a real thing, and had to make a decision of what was I going to do about this? Either plan A harder and continue to grind like we're usually taught to do, or advocating for myself and making a different decision. So at that point, I decided to go into the mental health field full time. And it's been the biggest blessing and honor that I've ever done in my entire life. It just feels so awesome to sit across from somebody and to just see them change and see them, like you mentioned, nobody is broken, but we get told that, or we start believing that, and that dictates our entire lives. So my job now moving forward is to remind people who they really are and that they are not broken, that there's nothing wrong with them, there's nothing to fix. It's just some programming, some wiring that needs to be readjusted. And that is the coolest work of all time, and I'm so glad to be doing it. As you know, I don't operate in traditional ways, so no first responder operates in traditional methods. Therefore, I take a lot of different takes to my work, including hypnosis and neurosomatic therapy, and really just building a relationship with people, because that's where I believe that's really where the change starts to happen. So that's the work and the mission I'm doing moving forward. And of course, have my podcast too, where we do similar things and support our first responders, and just getting information out there is my goal, using my voice.
All right. So you see why we have these folks here. Now, one of the things I'll warn you guys about, I'm from North Carolina. We use the word y'all a whole lot. So a lot of these questions are going to be for y'all. So for lack of a better way to describe it. So from the perspective that you guys have, what does untreated trauma actually look like, particularly in firefighters over time? And how early does it kind of set in? And what do you want?
So I kind of like laugh at this question when it comes up, because and I think a lot of people, and not to discount a lot of therapists, but people get very stuck in the diagnosis of things. And so when people come in and they say, oh, I have PTSD, or someone told me I have that trauma injury, I think the second you walk in the door from the parking lot, you could almost qualify for a technical PTSD diagnosis. It's kind of making a light of it, but it according to like the actual diagnosable standards, it only takes one event that throws you out of your baseline, that's too much, too fast, too soon, to qualify you for a diagnosis. I remember the very first call that I ever ran on was a dead person. The very first call. So from that moment on, it just kept piling up. And so I like to not get too caught up in it, because I think the diagnosis technicality isn't there, but we realize the impact of this over time. When seeing dead people becomes normalized, when seeing like the scenes of things, when seeing the worst of humanity all of the time and making decisions around that, that has a profound impact on our mind and on our body constantly, over and over. And you're just shoving stuff into a garage and hoping that it goes somewhere, essentially.
Yeah. And that is very true. I think all of us have our own trauma story, and we're all damaged from, well, not just one thing. Nate, how do you feel about that from your, I guess, point of view? Because like I said, you're more focused on, the actual application of dealing with operational trauma and stuff like that. What's your take on that? What does it look like for us today?
Absolutely. I always find it's best to speak from personal experience, because it's the most genuine information you can pass. I will say I love the use of the term storing your trauma in a garage. I mean, it's so apt when you think about a first responder coming out of the station. We use a similar term for military trauma. We call it our ruck. And what we've learned over time is there's only so much you can shove into that before it starts to fail you as a useful piece of gear. So for me, everything that, I heard Andre say, I agree with completely. I would tell you, for me, it manifested itself in some physical, some mental, and some emotional symptoms that individually, if you don't look at them and try to understand the root cause of them, you might think it's something else. But for me, isolation, anger, resentment, guilt, a lack of empathy. When I realized that I was truly injured from the trauma that I'd experienced, not only on active duty, deployed downrange, but trauma that I brought to the military service with me, I lost all sense of empathy, which was a terrible thing to realize, because I had really lost the one thing that makes humans so powerful, and that's the ability to connect with each other on a very personal and intimate level. Some of the things that, I started to take note of was my inability to sleep, my hypervigilance. I was self-medicating with alcohol on top of this wonderful cocktail of prescription medications that the VA prescribed to help me cope. And at the end of the day, I looked in the mirror and I was just like, I don't recognize the person staring back at me. And so, I would tell you that if listeners know anybody, or the person they see in the mirror has experienced some of those things, it is time to do, what we talked about early on, and that's prioritize yourself first. I mean, we hear it every day in life. You get on an airplane, and what does the flight attendant tell you? Put your oxygen mask on before you help somebody else. Yet first responders and veterans are called to serve, and we're very reluctant to take care of ourselves. And so I would encourage listeners to do stock of where they're at, and maybe put that oxygen mask on first, so then they can be value added to themselves and to their family members. But it's one of those things. And to your question about, when and what's a tipping point, I'm not trained in any way, shape, or form other than a school of hard knocks and experience. And what I've kind of come to realize is that I think human beings are set at birth with a level of trauma that they can experience before it starts to negatively impact their operating system. And for me, I think over time, if you don't retrain yourself and take advantage of all of the treatment modalities that are out there, whether it's therapy, whether it's group talk, whether it's, chemical interdiction, whether it's, some of these other wellness practices, eventually your shock absorbers wear like a eraser at a SAT test. And now you're in trouble because you find yourself injured. So that's I said an awful lot there, and hopefully some of that made some sense for folks.
It absolutely did, my friend. It absolutely did. But, when we talk about the operational stress, that comes with the territory of being a first responder. It's just part of the territory. But at what point do you move away from what's considered a regular operational stress and into a legitimate mental health, I'm not going to say crisis, but maybe an injury that would require some type of intervention or treatment or something like that?
I would say, again, the best example is always to speak from personal experience. I would say that, you start to realize that it only takes one episode to change your perspective on things. And if you don't address it right then and there, it's just going to compound over time. And so, I would say that, yes, it is part of what everybody signed up for. And that's what makes first responders and veterans, the best amongst us in the societies. We're willing to put, others ahead of our own personal needs. I think it crosses the line when a person has a problem with separating the experience from everyday life, when they allow it to creep in to their personal life, where it starts to impact their ability to focus, or at least to some of the other, physical, emotional manifestations that I talked about. I think that's when it crosses a line, and it's no longer say, suck it up as part of the job. And it's actually a consequence of the job that you have to figure out. What do you do? Right. Where do you go? How do you cope with this? So again, I think it's a slippery slope, because too many first responders and veterans are very stoic, and we are very good at compartmentalizing. We are very good at justifying and rationalizing, saying, well, somebody has to do it, and it is what it is. I mean, I hear that in every circle. But I would say that, there's a line that you cross very quickly if you're not monitoring yourself. Doing that, that self-care check-in.
Very good. Now, Ashlea, what do you think? Do you kind of same lines, or you got a different take on that?
No, I'm aligned with that as well, too. It was making me think of a conversation I had the other day with one of my good friends who's an ER nurse out in Kansas City. And she's been in the work for close to 20 years now. And she talks about how nobody told me this when I signed up. Nobody said, like, this is what was going to exactly be, what happened. You get the idea, and everybody sits through the initial, you're going to see stuff. It's going to be stressful, trauma, kind of the general spiel that they give you about what you're getting into. But nobody can ever really prepare you for what the job entails or what you're going to see or what you're going to go through. And she made this interesting comment to me. She said, Ashlea, I don't know that I would have changed my mind if I even knew what I was going to see. Because she's like pretty hard-headed like me too, but we come from this background of feeling like we need to take care of people, and like Nate was saying, put others first. That's ingrained in us before we even pick the job. And so we have this already deep pull towards that, and now it's like, it doesn't matter what I'm going to sacrifice, it doesn't matter. And we get caught in that mentality, and I think that's where that really becomes the issue of this martyrdom, or kind of almost falling on the sword of, it's not quite that bad yet, or my sleep isn't quite that bad, or the drinking isn't that bad. Like, we justify it all the time without actually being proactive. If we were proactive and we empowered people at the very, very beginning of the career and helped them to address what they're already coming in with, I am convinced that would set people up with such a different experience, and you could actually do the job in a very healthy way. You have to deal with your crap beforehand, and you have to be resourced going through this career. You cannot just hand in your badge or turn in your gun after 20 years and expect ponies and rainbows when you're retired, because I promise you, we're using a garage analogy here, but the garage is going to be pretty freaking full at that point. And good luck unpacking that after 20 plus years. That's a lot to handle. Whereas if you were doing that all along, I think it would be so different. And I think that's really one of the only ways to actually have a really good, incredible career doing this job, because it is an awesome job, but you have to do it the right way.
Yeah, well, sometimes the spiders in the corners of the garage are what scare me more than anything. Sometimes that scares the big stuff. But, both of y'all brought up a really good point, and that a lot of times the identity of a firefighter is what keeps them from seeking help until they're in crisis. We try to be big, bad, tough. Hey, it won't affect me. But what do you guys think are some of the cultural or identity things that we see maybe in the volunteer service, in whatever flavor of the fire service our listeners are engaged in? What do you think are some of those things that really impact why we wait so long?
We'll return after these messages.
Wake up slow, grab your mug, it's time to roll. All clear coffee, fire in your soul, brewed by Firefighter, strong and true. One bean at a time, we're looking out for you. From first sip through your last call of the day, fuel your fight, keep the drag away. Get your bag now, don't wait, don't stall. Allclearpodcast.com. Hey! We got beans for all.
I want to get really real on this one, so people will either like it or they won't. But I know for me, and speaking from Mike's time, is that I wanted to be accepted and belong so badly that whatever that took, like, it didn't matter. So speaking up and saying something, or saying I'm not okay, or I'm not feeling good in this way, or this stuff is showing up in my personal life, that felt like an inherent threat to say anything. So it was just shove it down, push it away, don't say anything, because I wanted to be part of the team. I wanted to be part of the family. And anything that threatens that doesn't feel good. And like most of us are not going to pick that route. So I think that's a lot of what it is. It's this constant wanting to belong and this underlying fire that burns that you need to be always performing and living up to a certain standard. And anytime you show that level of weakness or you say anything, again, that's a threat. And we're not going to do that. And so that was definitely my story, is I just didn't say anything. I was suffering in silence. It was showing up when I wasn't at the station or when I was alone in my room. There were, times where stuff was showing up, but I sure as heck was going to sit at the dinner table with a smile on my face and joke and, do all the things that we do. But you're wearing a mask the entire time.
Ashley, speaking my language, the mask of command, as we call it in the military, we're called to show nothing, no emotion, no reaction, no response to, a particular situation, and I think what it leads to is what I characterize as a normalization of deviance in our behavior. We see seeking help or engaging in self-care or putting your oxygen mask on yourself or sharpening your axe, use whatever analogy you need to. I think both cultures see that as a sign of weakness. And until we change the culture and, hold up people to say those that identify they have an injury and seek treatment are the strong ones, those are the best in breed that we should try to emulate. And until we make it so that access to, the training and the programs for our mental wellness, until we normalize those and make, access something that is easy, transparent, and seamless in our everyday life, I think you're going to continue to see people do exactly what Ashley described, and that's hide the injury and be like, hey, there's nothing here. I'm ready for the next mission. Put me in, coach. And all we end up doing is delaying the inevitable. The body eventually, the body keeps score. Eventually the body is going to betray you. And to me, that there lies the greatest risk, right? Particularly for first responders, because they're on the line every day. At least in the military, you go away for deployment for a specified period of time. You come home, you're off the line. First responders are never off the line. And the last thing any of us should want is a compromised first responder who's this close to having a mental or physical breakdown because we've allowed that trauma to build. And then now, catastrophe could happen. But it's one of those things that the parallels between, what I heard Ashley say and in my own story are very close. I would never admit there was something wrong with me while I was on active duty. I would not admit there was something wrong with me for 2 years in retirement. It took that long for me to finally have my rock bottom moment and realize if I don't do something, I will be one of the 22 veterans that takes their life every day because I was so far gone.
And, there's a lot of reality in that when, the way we're programmed to do our jobs really does have a negative impact if we don't start working through it. Now, I know you two both have very unique stories about how you came to the realization, hey, something's up. I've got to get some help. But what are some of the symptoms, I guess, physical, emotional? What are some of those symptoms that maybe we should be looking for in ourselves or even with the folks on our crews or those around us? What are some of those things that we should be looking for that maybe will throw that red flag that they need to get some help?
I have a different view on it now than I used to because I look at this a lot from the lens of the nervous system because that's one of the biggest tall tales of where people are at. And there's a lot of sneaky things that show up that aren't necessarily your classic symptoms. So I'd say for sure, everybody talks about sleep disturbances, but that really is truly a thing, including nightmares. Nightmares are not normal. So we could just squash that now. If you're having nightmares, something is going on under the surface. Your subconscious is trying to process stuff that's not getting processed. I would say the anger, irritability, huge. Short fused, those are like some of the last symptoms to show up. But before that, you're going to see things like hypervigilance, not being able to go in a restaurant, sit with your back towards the door, or like I did, I was sitting in a concert venue and like panning out all the fire escapes. How am I getting out of here if something happens?
That's not normal.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry.
It's weird, isn't it? Like, it's just so strange. I would say that overthinking, that constantly being 10 steps ahead all of the time, problem solving, looking for like what are the dangers or the threats. I've worked with several veterans who haven't been able to go to the gas station without having a full-blown panic attack because they can't distinguish the gas station here versus the gas station or driving through a town when they were deployed. So your nervous system isn't going to know time, place, and event. So those same kind of symptoms are showing up because it can't differentiate the scenario. Those are huge ones. I would say anxiety, panic, definitely looking at OCD, the need to control things. And if they don't go your way, then everything falls apart for you is a massive sign of that. Isolation, withdrawal, numbing out, disassociating. I call it zombie scrolling if you're on your phone all the time. That kind of shutting down, as well as some of the other ones that are kind of tricky are like always saying yes all the time. So not having very good boundaries and always being the one to sign up for extra teams, extra projects, overtime. Kind of that always going with the people pleasing, like kind of taking care of everyone else. Well, the department really needs me. They don't have anybody else. Who else are they going to call? I'll go in. Like that kind of behavior. A lot of those people don't realize those are your stress and trauma responses, your programming that's showing up because you're basically going back to these survival patterns. And so when those are in play, you have to really, really look at the deeper symptoms because those are all coming from a certain place. They're coming from some belief system or some memory, something that's there. And so those are some, I like to kind of bring light to some of the ones that people don't often look at. And of course, substance use and relationship issues, all those things, like all of that adds up. And you can't just shut it off and not you come home with all that stuff. You're not that good. Nobody is. It impacts everything. So looking at your behaviors on a huge global scale will give you a lot of information.
I saw Nate up there nodding his head a whole lot. I know he's probably got a few more to add to the pile.
Yeah, no, and I'll double down on some of the more easier ones to recognize in your teammates. It's easier to see it in your teammates before you see it in yourself. But the isolation and the withdrawal are huge. The other thing for me is a telltale is an increase in the application of self-deprecating humor or dark humor. When I start to see a teammate default to those as a thing that they didn't do before, but they've started to do it more and more, I start to ask myself the question, hey, what's going on there? Particularly the dark humor one. And I can't speak for the first responder community, but I know in the military, dark humor is used to do a myriad of things that are unhealthy for the human body. One of it is to, minimize our impact and feelings about maybe something that we did that borders on dishonorable, or maybe something that runs counter to, your religious upbringing or whatever. And some of it is just used to get through the sight, sounds, and smells of combat. And there's no other way to process it because there isn't a healthy mechanism. So dark humor is definitely one. And then the other one for me that I always look for in people is if, for example, I have a group of buddies that we like to hike, we like to motorcycle, we like to cycle. If I have friends who miss a scheduled meetup, more than once or twice in a row, I start to ask the question, have they stopped doing the things that used to bring them pleasure? And then I have to, be a little bit intrusive in my questioning to say, hey, what's kind of going on? So those are the things. Ashlea's list is a great list. I agree with 100%. Those are the other things that I would just ask people to kind of be aware of. And unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, those go hand in hand with many other diagnoses. So even if it's not a trauma injury, they could be suffering from something else that maybe they're having a little trouble processing. So again, we always used to say, see something, say something. Don't be afraid to have the hard conversation, particularly the one where you ask the question, or are you currently thinking about maybe hurting yourself? Because the last thing you want to do is stay silent on that one. That's a thing that, I have myself had to deal with, second guessing. Maybe if I had said something, would that person have had a successful suicide or not? So, yeah.
And there's a lot of commonality. I think all three of us, and everyone around us has had similar reality checks when it comes to seeing people around us maybe display some of those. Maybe we do ourselves. But I'm going to play therapist for just a minute, or armchair therapist. So please bear with me in this next question. A lot of times we face very difficult, I'm putting that right here, very difficult situations. And then we have a cumulative buildup of a bunch of small things. And I think when you look at, particularly with the folks in the volunteer world, they have fire right here, which is very big for them. And then they also have a life that oftentimes is very separate and very different from their life as a firefighter. How does the cumulative exposure weigh out compared to, say, that one or two really big snot-slinging fires where you've got a fatality? How do those two things weigh out against each other? And how do we kind of deal with that, particularly when it comes to maybe if we have another aspect of our life that we lean on just as much as our fire service?
We'll return after these messages.
Are you enjoying this podcast? If so, we have a small favor to ask. Subscribing and donating helps us to keep the show running and brings you even more great content. By subscribing, you'll never miss an episode. You'll be able to support what you love. Donations, no matter how small, can help us cover production costs, improve the quality of each episode, and generally keep the lights on. So hit that subscribe button, and if you can, consider making a donation. Visit us at allclearpodcast.com to donate and catch up on past episodes and even read our blog. Thanks for listening and supporting our show.
I think, again, in my experience with this is the big is I think you used the term, snot, dripping fire, right? And compared to the death by 1,000 cuts, so to speak, right? And I think the thing I would share is, I think it's important to focus on the little events, because over time those build up and they could have a greater effect or impact than that one big event. I would tell you that it was easy for me to point to a single moment in combat and say, that's the moment that harmed me the most. But the reality was it was a buildup of the little events. From the first time I saw, a human being take the life of another human being, to the first time I saw the horrible, impacts of civilian casualties, to the first time I held one of my Marines in my arms as they left this planet. I realized that the little events that I wasn't paying attention to probably caused the greater harm. And so the best way I can answer your question is I would encourage viewers and listeners to not think that it has to be one big event that's going to cause the injury. I think it's the little ones over time that probably end up doing more damage, because it's very easy to sweep them to the side, put them in the garage, put them in your pack, and move on. Again, it's one of those things. I think human beings are born with an ability to experience so much trauma before their nervous system and other systems start to impact. So I guess my advice would be pay attention to the little ones, because they seem to add up very quickly. The bigger ones are easier to spot and maybe do something about, but watch out for the little ones.
For sure. Ashlea, what's your take on that?
From my own journey, it was definitely the cumulative. So of course, we all have had big calls and things like that. But for me, what Nate alluded to earlier was that disconnection from your humanity. It was the little stuff that led me to that. So it was the homeless guy that called 20 times in a set, or the, assisted living calling for lift assists 1,000 times. Those kind of things. Like, we don't realize that the environment, the job itself, is always going to have a low level of stress as is. Even if you don't run a single call for an entire set or do anything, your nervous system is already primed up. You're already primed up just being in the environment. And so now these little things over time, and then you sprinkle in a few of the big calls, it all compounds on each other. And it's just that, like, compounding interest. Like, you're just building up your interest. Your bank account's just growing more and more with every single little thing that you put in there. So I totally agree, is that you have to take the proactive response to it and not just get hung up like a lot of people do, is say, oh, it's not that bad. I haven't experienced that many tough calls or that big of things. It doesn't really matter. And recognizing, like you mentioned, the volunteers who have a whole nother life outside of this, which really everybody does, whether you're looking at career versus volunteer, or even military, everybody has some kind of life going on outside of that. Well, think about how just inherently stressful regular life can be, because everybody has, we're in relationships, we have kids, we have pets, we have finances, we have our own physical health, we have parents, like all those things. Like, it's already a level of stress. So now you're adding that into the mix of everything else and almost expecting yourself to be a superhuman and handle a lot of stress, which, Nate's right. We just have a certain threshold and a certain capacity to where that's no longer going to work. You're not that good. And so I think addressing that, and again, taking the proactive stance to it and having those resources and support set up, you can do it healthy, but it's going to take intentional work doing it.
And the key, I think, that's big for me is the fact that, yes, there's a ton of stress at work, but we all have the stresses outside of work that we tend to take to work with us, or we take work home, and it just kind of compounds. One of my favorite lines is by Jimmy Buffett. In one of his songs, he said, relationships, we all want them, we all got them, now what do we do with them? And I think a lot of times, I love that line. But it makes me think about the fact that, our kids cause stress. My son causes me a lot of stress, but I love every minute of it. Being married causes stress, but guess what? It's great. It's worth it. And the same thing at work. I love my job, but sometimes I bring home, something negative that happened, and it impacts them. So just understanding that it can come from all sides, both inside and outside of the job, is pretty critical. But this is the question I am probably most excited about from having both of y'all here, because I think you guys are each on different ends of the spectrum when it comes to dealing and treating and working with folks that have issues that they're working through, trauma issues. So I'm going to start with Nate. From your work and your experience, what forms of treatment or interventions are actually helping firefighters right now? From your lens, what do you think is working, what's not working, and what are we missing, or what are we not understanding completely?
Yeah, I think, let me start by, a little bit of soapbox here. And I would say that, the most successful treatments are the ones that are multidisciplinary. It's not one or the other. And one of the things I try to encourage the people that I work with and the people that I talk about these things with is, don't discount something until you've tried it, because you never know. And that's one of the things I liked about, Ashlea said she takes a non-traditional approach to it. I love that. I would submit that it's a combination of modalities that are probably going to yield the best impact in the long run. Many of my friends are anti-medication because, they have had the bad experience with the VA where the meds you were given get you to coping. Well, we all can agree that coping is not enough for our veterans and our first responders. They deserve an opportunity to thrive after service. And so many people get caught in the trap of saying, medications are bad. And then some people will get into the trap of saying, talk therapy doesn't do anything for me, so I'm just not going to do it. And many of my Sheepdog Impact Assistance brothers and sisters are, dead set on saying the only thing that works is peer-led training to help people understand how that trauma affects their body and their brain, and how you can give them training in emotional regulation techniques. That's the only thing that works. For me, we have to be careful about that and realize that for the individual, it's probably going to be the application of many types of, modalities to yield the best positive result. And so I would say what I share with people is find out what works for you. And you're not going to know what works for you until you try everything, and don't discount everything. One of the most powerful gifts I've been given was the thing that I thought would be the least useful for me in life, and that's transcendental meditation. That was a game changer for me, but it was something that as one of these overbearing alpha macho Marines, I was like, wait a minute, what? You want me to meditate? If I don't meditate first thing in the morning, and if I don't meditate first thing at night, my congruence between my brain and my heart is off for the whole day. And then what happens is I give people, it's not me having a bad day, I give people a bad version of me. So I would just say for your listeners and anybody that, thinks about these types of things, explore everything that's out there, and then pull from the menu what works best for the individual. But don't close your mind off of anything. And if you've had a bad experience with a therapist, find another one, right? Think about how many people have bad experiences with a spouse and they get divorced and they go looking for another one, or they looking for another one. Why don't they apply that same logic to their therapy choice? How many times through your life do you change something until you get it right? So I would just say be open to everything, try everything. And I think the best cure comes from synthesizing a bunch of different types of approaches.
Very good. Now, Ashlea, I'm going to ask you the same question. Now, you have a very different, I guess, approach to how, you're being more of a, when I say traditional therapist, I know you're unconventional in a lot of stuff, but how does what, Nate mentioned, how does that look through your lens?
It's pretty much spot on what I was going to say. Is just like using a toolbox, whereas if we're going to fix, the engine of a car, we're not coming at this project with just a wrench and expecting to do it. And so, as he mentioned, having this diverse toolbox to pull from, or the menu like he talked about, is so crucial. And I think a lot of people don't even understand that that's a thing. It's like, oh, I'm either only gonna do peer-led support groups, or I'm only gonna do talk therapy or whatever. But that's not, nobody does that with anything else. Like, we don't do that with our physical health. Nobody's like, I'm only just gonna eat kale. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So why would you look at it any differently? Is you need different resources, different modalities to set you up, to help take care of your mental health just like you do your physical health, right? We have to eat well, we have to sleep well, we have to lift weights, you have to do some kind of movement, cardio, whatever that looks like. Taking the same approach to your mental health will change everything for you. And looking at this too is one modality might work for you in this season, but the next season you need something else. Like, you need a different tool, a different resource. And so you're constantly adding tools to your toolbox that you always have to rely upon. So when that thing comes up, okay, maybe I go to equine therapy this month, or maybe I'm going to go do some neurofeedback, or I'm going to go do yoga or my mindfulness. Or you develop this practice of tools that work for you. And then you explore some of the other stuff, because the cool thing is now there are so many stinking things that you can try and do, and you will find something that works. But give yourself those deep pockets, essentially, with all those things in it, and different therapists, different flavors of therapists, different styles of therapy, that really it's just an excuse. Like, if you're going to just be honest with yourself, the excuse is, I don't feel like I'm worthy. I don't feel like I'm the investment. Like, that's really the core issue of it. It's not that the The therapist may not have been great, and that's fine, but you have to decide that you're worth the investment, and you'll do whatever it takes to take care of that investment. That's my suggestion.
So just out of curiosity, if one of your patients would come to you and say, I just don't think it's working. I don't think your style and my needs match up. Does that offend you?
If it did, that's a good spot for me to work on, right? It's showing me something in myself. But I actually respect that so much because I care so much about people who come or we come into contact with that I want the best for you. So if I'm not your cup of tea, that's totally fine. A lot of people have extra resources too, and maybe I can send you somewhere else or go try this. I would rather, again, like Nate said, I would rather you be here tomorrow than to keep coming to me and not getting actually what you need. It's way too important. It's not about me, it's about you.
One of the words that I heard, but I think both of you use it, is investing in yourself, investing the time. And we all know that's critical, but at the same time, leadership has to buy in on investing in the firefighters. We buy gear, we buy the best turnout gear we can, we get new trucks, we learn new skills, we do all that. But a lot of times this aspect of caring for the men, caring for the ladies is overlooked. How do you think a department that may be struggling with budget, that may be struggling with resources, how do you think they would be able to maybe apply some of this information to make their crews healthier and better?
This is a good one because I don't know. I haven't had anybody yet. I've talked about leadership a few times on my podcast too, and I haven't actually heard from the leadership themselves, so I don't know how they always receive this conversation. But I honestly, as old as it sounds, it starts from the top down. So number one, I think if the leaders did their own work, if they invested in themselves, that puts you in a whole different mindset to say this is a priority. I know how important this is for me. Why would it not be for everyone else? And just creating that shift in the culture and that space to give people the resources, give people what they need without that fear underneath it would be so game changing. And it's bizarre to me of how like difficult they make it on people getting access to resources, whether it's first responders or military too. I had a recent vet that told me he was shocked because my sessions are longer than an hour. An hour is not enough. And he's like, you're not looking at your watch? You're not kicking me out yet? And I'm like, no, like we're done. But it's so just regimented. And I think that's also what makes people so hesitant. But having open doors to this and realizing this is so much more important than we're realizing, because not only, as Nate mentioned, do you have healthy people showing up for the job, but you have healthy people leaving the job, and you have healthy people at home, and then those people create more healthy people, and it's so much bigger than what we realize. But the leadership has to find the value and the investment in that, as we're talking about. It's just like a non-negotiable, which is so bizarre to me, but it's first admitting that there is an issue, there's a huge problem, and the statistics prove them all in themselves, like how, 8 out of 10 first responders have some kind of mental issue. That's 80%. 8 people out of the 10 at the table have a problem. How do you deny those statistics and say we don't have a problem? If you said 8 out of 10 people's bunker gear are failing, would you keep doing the same bunker gear? No, you would make a shift and a difference. But it's being very real and making it a priority and saying, going to, city leaders or city council or whoever it is and saying, this is so important, we have to do this. It's a non-negotiable.
Yeah, no, I love what Ashley said. And I actually love this question, Travis. It's a great question. And you and I have talked a couple times before about leadership. How do you get leadership to change the way it looks at things? I used the term earlier about normalization of deviance. There isn't a leader out there in the first responder world or the military who would do the following: send a man or woman out on mission without the proper personal protective equipment. It just wouldn't happen. So I ask leaders, why is it okay to send that person out there with no protection for their soul, no protection for their mental and emotional well-being? Why do you just ignore that? And to those that say, well, it's expensive in time, money, and resources, here's where I'll be selfish for a second and encourage listeners to take advantage of the 3-4 opportunities that are out there, like Sheepdog Impact Assistance. Everything we offer is 100% free for the veteran or the first responder. Again, it's not the only thing out there, but it is one thing that you can add to your kit, if you will, to protect yourself a little bit. I try never to use the word toolbox, because for a lot of people, you say toolbox and they immediately think something's broken, and I don't want somebody to feel that they're broken. And the other thing I like to remind people is, when you're done with the tool, where does it go? It goes back into the toolbox and it's left there until something breaks again. And I would encourage people to, whatever you take on, make it part of your everyday life, your new norm. So take advantage of the programs that are out there. We offer, and we can provide a list, if we're not your cup of tea, we can provide a list of all the other free for opportunities that leaders can send their people to. It's a small investment for a big return as far as I'm concerned. And I just don't, look, I led at the highest levels for a really long time. And I used to be the person that said I would do anything for my Marines. Nobody cares more about the Marines than I do. And my bumper sticker used to be, no one cares what you know till they know how much you care. Yet not once in 34 years did I think about, what can I give my Marines to protect their souls, to protect their mental and emotional well-being. I just never thought about it. And so as we bring more attention to it, as we have more conversations like this, and as more programs are stood up, there's a lot of free for out there that's really effective. And I would take the Pepsi challenge with what we're providing any day. But I do want to caution people, it's not a magic pill. They're still going to have to do some work, and they're going to have to probably link it to some other modality for that long-term impact that they deserve. Their time in service should not be the pinnacle of their existence. We should set men and women up to live life so full when they stop serving that they go after that second mountain, whatever it is. And so, again, leaders just need to change the culture and go after that. Again, what I call that normalization of deviance.
I agree very much with what both of you are saying. Now, I'm going to get on my soapbox here for a minute. One of the things that my podcast focuses on is improving the firefighter, whether it be improve your physical, abilities, your skills at the trade, whether it be your mental fitness. There's so many things we need to do. And the fire service is so quick to focus on something. For a while it was cancer, then it was, mental health, then it's shifted off of that. Now it's, are you obese? Are you out of shape? It swings back and forth all the time. But we have taken very serious steps in reducing cancer exposures by learning how to decon gear and things like that. We have learned that you need to work out regularly. You need to eat better to take care of our bodies. Do you think that if we would start including take care of your well-being mentally, spiritually, do you think that would be as effective in reducing a lot of the issues as we've seen with all these other things that the fire service has addressed?
Not a firefighter, never was, but I definitely think yes. And again, my proof is in watching the men and women come through Warrior Path and seeing them go out the door with the ability to do what I like to call control the dimmer switch in their life. They come in and they see lights as either on or off proposition. Ashlea talked about it, that hypervigilance, sitting in a room and spotting all of the exits, spotting all the potential threats, identifying potential allies, things like that. I would say yes. And I would also encourage the leaders to understand that we're not talking about adding a huge syllabus to an already overpacked training schedule, right? We're not asking, in my opinion, we're not asking them to take on this onerous thing. I would to talk with people about some of the simple things that you can introduce into your life, and the individual gets to pick the ones that make the most sense to them. Like we give them, 52 training modules and, 36 practices to choose from at Warrior Path, and they choose the ones that make the most sense, and then you incorporate it into your daily routine. And so it's not seen as something that is onerous or burdensome. It's seen as just part of your preventative maintenance checks on your body, right? Again, I know the fire culture and I know the law enforcement and the military culture share that similar view on pre-combat checks and inspections. You would never leave the station not having checked your PPE, your hoses, whatever, right? Make sure that your med kit has been inspected and repacked so you don't get on scene and realize, oops, I don't have, the proper gauge needles. So I would say, yes, you can start to make small changes now that have long impact and just change the way people think about that self-care thing. And you could have really good results for not a lot of effort, in my opinion.
Very good.
Yeah, I echo pretty much exactly what Nate's saying here too, and looking at things like a maintenance program. And that's how I really, really strongly carry this mission forward, to help people realize that if you took this in a different way, if you committed to yourself and you, again, implemented it into your life, just like you do with your fitness, just like you do with your spirituality, just like you do with anything else, it will set you up so much differently. If even if you go into a therapy session or whatever and you're just talking about nothing, just talking, you're still building that relationship. And when it hits the fan, because it will in some form or fashion, you already have an ally in your corner. You already have these resources that you've been working on, and you're already set up so much differently to handle that. It's that being proactive rather than reactive, as we're so good at reacting. After this happened, this person killed themselves. Oh, now what are we going to do? We don't know how we didn't see this coming, all this stuff. Or this person's, kid is having these issues. We didn't see this coming. All these things, if we were more proactive on the stance that you're doing all of this as part of just taking care of yourself and investing in yourself, it'd be so much different. I mean, on any level, it would be so much different. You're just taking care of the entire ecosystem, and not just when you get sick or you're in crisis. Man, I think people just have a totally different experience. It would be incredible.
And, I can't disagree with anything either of you guys have said. It has to be an ongoing process. And like Nate was saying, you've got to find those things in your daily life that make you feel better, that make you work, that self-care. It's critical, and it has to be looked at just like any other type of preventative care or getting a physical at the doctor, whatever the case is. But so I'm going to conclude with this question. And if there were three things that people could do today, tonight, maybe tomorrow when they go on shift, what should they start doing to begin the process of improving their own mental fitness, or maybe the mental fitness of their department? And I'm going to start off with Ashlea on that one.
I like this one. I love rapid thinking while you're shooting out the question. First thing I would say is, if you hear that question and you thought to yourself, or you have that, maybe I should do something, then you should do something. You're already maybe a little bit late to the game. Get into the game now. Go do something. Don't wait. The second thing that I would say that you could start doing now is just getting curious. Start exploring some different modalities, some different techniques, some different resources. Looking at things and taking the initiative yourself, is you can't wait for the department to do it for you. If it's important, you need to do it for yourself. So take that initiative. And the third thing I would say, and probably the biggest thing, is that you need to remember the truth of who you are, is that there is nothing wrong with you and that you aren't broken. that you're incredibly loved and that you are absolutely worth this. No matter what it is, like, there is hope tomorrow, there's hope today, and that you got people who really, really do care about you. And remembering that it's awesome that Nate brought up Viktor Frankl, because he's one of my favorite too. But he has a quote that said, "A man who has a why can get through any how." And so no matter what you're going through, no matter what it looks like for you, is lean into your why. Why are you going to choose to make this investment in yourself? Why are you going to do the hard work? Because this work is not easy. This can be difficult, and sometimes the hardest work you'll ever do, but I promise it's worth the cost of admission. But lean into your why. Do it for you. Do it for your family. Do it because you know the impact of one. One person needs you to do this work because they're in the similar spot as you are, or one day they may be in that spot and they need you to help walk them through. So don't discount how powerful your impact is. That was a lot of, probably more than technically 3 things, but had to get it all out there.
We'll let it slide. We'll let it slide this time. Okay, Nate, what you got for us?
No, thank you. I'll again, all of what I'm about to say goes back to what Ashlea said, and that's men and women realizing that they are so deserving of the best possible life that they can get because of who they are and because of what they chose to do as far as serve others. But the 3 things that I would encourage folks to do immediately is, if you don't already incorporate some kind of breathing, grounding, or meditation practice in your life, definitely start to do that. It can be as simple as, we use a 4-7-8 breathing technique. Some people call box breathing, something like that. Use that pre-shift, mid-shift, post-shift to just reset your nervous system again, because your body definitely reacts to the stressors that it experiences during a particular shift. So if you're not already using a breathing, grounding, or meditative practice, definitely would encourage them to do that. The other thing I would encourage folks to do is to journal. Write down what it is that you experienced on a particular shift, and not just responded to a call and the call consisted of. Take that extra step to say, how did it feel on that? Did something feel different on that call? Did you see or experience a sight, sound, or smell that you hadn't anticipated and impacted you in a way that, hadn't before? Because, what I encourage people to do is to realize that these things are starting to build. And back to my comment about that death by 1,000 cuts. So journal. And the other thing too in that journal is journal the good things that happen in life too. Because too often folks who are in a position where they have been injured from a traumatic event, they sometimes let that event define them. And again, that's why I too love Viktor Frankl so much. The man experienced the worst imaginable thing possible, yet he found the power in him to do the most amazing thing that a human has the capacity to do, right? And so journal the good, journal the bad, but definitely journal. I think that's a thing that all first responders and veterans need to be better at. And then the last thing I would say is, there's this thing out there that if we don't talk about it, it didn't happen. And so I like to encourage people to do what I call constructive storytelling. Don't just relive an issue or an incident just to relive it or complain about it or let it have some kind of a hold over you. Use it for the cathartic nature that it can provide you, and talk about what it is you experienced, what it is you felt, and how and why it impacted. The ancients were very good at this. And I think I talked about this on one of your other shows, Travis. The ancients were very good at this. They used the labyrinth to allow returning warriors to dump, if you will, those experiences of combat, the sights, sounds, the smells, the lives that they took, the lives that they lost. And when they came out of that labyrinth, society re-welcomed them back into the community as a member of society, not the warrior or protector that they were. Somewhere over time, we just have gotten away from that, and we don't want to talk about it now. I would encourage people to talk about it. Have those constructive storytelling sessions. Find somebody, or if you can find a few, we talk about the power of your 3 to 5, those 3 to 5 men or women who lift you up and want the best for you. Use them to create your own little talk therapy circle, if you will. And don't be afraid to talk about some of these things and admit some of the things that you experience, because I guarantee you the man or woman to your left, to your right is probably thinking or feeling the same exact thing. So those would be the 3 that I would encourage folks with the caveat of agreeing with Ashlea, they absolutely deserve everything that they can possibly do to live the best possible version of themselves.
Very good. So, kind of in conclusion, I'm going to talk to our audience for a minute. You know, you have just heard two of the most important and best voices about mental fitness and dealing with trauma as a first responder. It's critical that you take care of yourself. You know, we are fathers, we are mothers, we are sons and daughters, we're brothers, we're sisters. We have people that depend on us, and we have to show up for them as well. So we have to take care of ourselves. And if you know someone that's struggling, if you know someone that's having trouble, talk to them. Hey, how you doing? Are you okay? How was your weekend? Just those simple words, I've seen it make a huge difference in what'll happen. So, you know, there's a lot of resources that are available, and just about everywhere has a peer support team. I know here in the state of North Carolina, we have multiple peer support teams and things that are available. But if you don't feel comfortable talking to them, talk to somebody, whether it be your spouse, whether it be a friend, whether it be somebody at your church, in your congregation, whatever. Feel free, start talking. That's the key, I think, to come out of all of this. So I want to thank both of you folks for being with us today. It's good to have you back again. So Nate, if people want to learn about you and what you're doing, where can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you have the ability to put my contact information in your show notes, but please
It'll be there.
Please feel free to share it. Sheepdogia.org is the website that they can go to. They can learn everything they possibly would want to know about our organization, our 3 pillars that are designed to engage, empower, and assist our sheepdogs to live a life of purpose and passion after service. So please hit me up. I will respond to anybody, any cold call, day or night. You know, my goal in life is to never say no when somebody says they need help. But sheepdogia.org, or put my email in the show notes. You can even put my phone number in there. Folks can text me. I wish somebody was there for me when I needed them the most. And eventually, obviously they were, otherwise I wouldn't be here. I want to be that person for as many men and women as I can for the rest of my life. So please hit me up. And again, for the listeners, everything we offer is free, and what we offer is amazing and life-changing and life-saving.
Ashlea, how can folks find out about you?
Yeah, the best place is my website, which is ashleadillard.com, but Ashlea is spelled differently, so don't get hung up on this one. It's ASHLEA Dillard.com. So you can find all the stuff there, more details about the work that I do, a little bit more about my story. And then I'm on all the socials, so you can find Ashlea Dillard Therapy, connect with me there. Echoing what Nate said, here for you 100%. So even if you're not going to do work with me, that's totally fine, but I'm here as a support too. Can help you find other resources if you need something different, but here to advocate for you and to be that support as well moving forward. So.
And also, her podcast is pretty cool too.
Oh,
so
yeah, I forgot.
Yes, you forgot
Sit
about
around
that.
the fire. That's where you can catch me. Yes.
Absolutely. And you're probably going to see Nate over there before too long, and
Yeah.
I might be back. And all these, you're going to see us together in different places. But again, thank you guys for coming on, being with us. Honor and a privilege to know you guys and to really be able to benefit from y'all's knowledge. So, as we always say here on the All Clear podcast, light your fire within. That's a wrap. All clear. Like, subscribe, and watch the video on YouTube. Do it now. Shout out to the North Carolina Firefighter Cancer Wellness Alliance, keeping our crews alive and strong. Hit allclearpodcast.com for every past episode. Grab your battalion newsletter. No spam, no selling, just the real deal. Stay sharp, watch your six, and we'll see you on the next call.